Hello, this is Gary007 and welcome to my channel. This is a beginner's guide on factory production and supply chain. So I really do hope you enjoy this video and you kind of get something out of it. This is the whole goal of my videos, is for people coming into the game to get a bit of a grasp on the supply chain aspect and setting up stations and founding mines and all the rest of it. So I cover a lot of that in this video, so I hope you do enjoy the video and you do get something out of it. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So the first thing I might cover off really briefly and really quickly is check the local market and on the galaxy map with a high-tech trading system. An exceptional one would be as the minimum entry level into this, and this just allows you to see what's in hot demand and what isn't. This is important because you don't want to set up a station in the wrong area where there's no demand for your goods. So you don't want to set up a water station in an area that doesn't require any water whatsoever. So the dark red equals high demand, and cold blue equals low demand or no demand whatsoever. So you will struggle in a cold blue economy trying to sell water when there's an oversupply of that certain product. So just check first what would be the appropriate station for you to found. So in order to found a station, you need to visit a shipyard. You need the station founder, you need to select station founder, and you need to add crew and a captain. It's very important that you make sure you add a captain, because a captain obviously will run your station and you can't do it without a captain. I'm going to call this station 103. Once you've selected it and you build it, it takes about 5 minutes for the build to complete. Once it's complete, you can go and jump into the ship and find a suitable spot where you want to build a station. And this one is the distillery that produces liquor. So I've just founded the station. Now this is where you would normally build a station. I have blueprints, so I save a lot of blueprints. So I've got saved designs of stations. This cuts down on me fluffing around in my game. So I do this in creative mode. If you haven't seen my other videos, I go into creative mode and I build stations in that and test them out to see how viable they are. So this one's been built. You go into the commands and you go into order, and this will give you an overlay of your station, and there's a lot of information here to sort of pick up. So if you're not familiar, this is a tier 2 station, a low-tech station. This one requires goods in order for it to operate. It requires energy cells, water, and wheat. So the missing ingredient at the moment is wheat. I've got various ways to fulfill that, but for now this is a tier 2 station that requires 3 products to work. The prices here that you see, -12 plus 24, they're all fluctuating prices of what's selling and what's not selling, what's in demand and what isn't. Obviously energy cells aren't in hot demands, but wheat and water are. They only come into play when you're relying on the AI to feed into your station in order to produce your final product, which is liquor. So I'll just stop the video here briefly. The liquor prices are -12% at the moment. The average galactic price for the station is 2,000 credits per 5 quantity of liquor. And it's -12%, which works out to be the 1,936 profit margin that you would make on this particular item at this moment. So that's what that's telling you. The base price here, if I pause the video again, this is your only slider when it comes to determining how you're going to sell your product. There's not 2 sliders. I wish there was, one to buy, one to sell. There's only one slider. So I'm moving the slider to -5%, so I'm losing money. Well, not losing money, I'm just selling it cheaper in order to so I get a flow of income. If I left it high, I'd hardly get any traders coming in. and so that's your profit money, and the money spent is 0, and that comes into play when you can rely on the AI to feed into your stations. So I have a way of fulfilling this supply chain on my own, so it will always show 0, and the profit is 0 at the moment because it's a fresh station, so there's no profit being made on it. The fetched goods icon at the below here, you got 3. You can only do up to 3 items at a time that you can fetch goods from stations. This comes into play with cargo shuttles and all the rest of it. So I have the option at the moment to collect water, wheat and solar power. If I had cargo shuttles, the little fighter ones. So at the moment I'm just going to leave it at none, right? Just to show you a brief overview of the station and what information you can get out of it. Now, the other thing I wanted to sort of touch on briefly when it comes to stations is upgrading factories increases the number of concurrent production cycles, 2 by default, 1 per upgrade, 6 maximum. But the time to finish a cycle remains the same. So all that's saying is that when you first create a station, you'll only have 2 production lines that will be that will recycle over and over again. You can increase those production lines by 1 up to a maximum of 6. It costs a lot of money to do so. So instead of doing it straight away, because for this particular instance, if I was to have 6 production lines, it's going to cost 13.5 million credits. That's almost a station on itself. Well, it is. Some stations are less than that. So before you get to this stage, you want to work out whether it's worth upgrading it or not. In most cases it's not, but if you've got a large supply chain working, that's when you'd really want to have another look at it. If you're failing to keep up in one of the processes in one of the areas of a supply chain, like the wheat factory can't keep up with a cattle factory and so on and so forth. So that's the time when you might want to look at upgrading your production lines. The other side of it is your production lines always stay the same cycle. So the way they produce, so it takes, in order to reduce the cycle time of the production line, is you can add assembly blocks to your station. So, and you can reduce the production time down. Now the catch is some stations are already sit at 15 seconds, and some stations sit at 20 seconds. So if adding assembly blocks to a station that's already at 15-second production cycle, you're not doing any favors. It's not going to reduce it anymore. The minimum decreased production time that you can achieve is 15 seconds. So the only way, without looking at Wikipedia, Avorion Wikipedia, just sit back in a drone or in a spaceship and just count it out and see how long it takes to produce each cycle. If it's the 15-second mark, then you're not going to be able to add any. You're not going to be able to speed that production line up at any point. So I just wanted to point that out. It's probably clear as mud. So we're going to briefly touch on mines. So mines are things that you're going to come across a lot in the game, and in order to found a mine, they're essentially large asteroids out in Avorion that are part of asteroid fields, or you might find them in Alliance factions bases that haven't been claimed. You got 2 options. You can claim it for yourself to found a mine, or you can sell it back to a faction for reputation. Generally around mid-game you might start deciding that you might want to found a mine, and that's because you might have a bit more cash flow. So there's different mines that you can found. You got an ore mine, a copper mine, ice mine, silicon mine, coal mine, aluminium mine, zinc mine, oil rig, and a lead mine. noble metal mine, and there's 5 different types of those noble metal mines. So they all produce something different in regards to, some of them are more profitable per galactic averages than others, but it all depends on the supply chain as well, and what area you sit in space, and what's in hot demand. What you can do, and this is how you can look at the supply chain side of things. So there's a lot of stations in Avorion which have synergy with each other. It takes a little bit of digging around to find what that synergy is, but once you have a few combinations going, you can start reaping the benefits of setting up a supply chain. So let's look at an oil rig. If you decided to found an oil rig on an asteroid, and a solar power plant, which is a basic factory on its own. Now these two one produces raw oil and the other produces energy cells. These basic factories don't require any more input after the initial setup costs, so you don't need to feed anything into these stations. So these are the very base stations that spread out on the supply chain, and so like the low-tech factory, if you set these 2 stations up, an oil rig and a solar power plant, you can then have the opportunity to set up an oil refinery. And an oil refinery requires raw oil and energy cells. And this raw oil refinery produces oil. If you've set up an oil refinery, then you have the opportunity to set up a plastic manufacturer which produces plastic. It uses oil and it uses energy cells. So you're starting to see a bit of a synergy there. You can start creating a supply chain. Another combination, and this one's one that I do a lot, setting up a coal mine and setting up a scrap metal trader. Now the coal mine produces coal obviously, and the scrap metal trader produces scrap, and both of those are required for a steel factory. So you can then found a steel factory, and you've created a small supply chain, but nevertheless it's a profitable one. Steel's often in high demand all around the galaxy. Again, just check with your trading chip and to see if it is in high demand in that particular sector. So basic factories. So these are the basic factories that you would probably start off with when you start founding stations. So a water collector, solar power plant, plankton collector, crystal farm, gas collector. There's 4 different types of gas collectors, mineral extract, and a scrap metal factory. So these are basic, very basic tier 1 factories. None of these factories require any input except for the initial startup costs. So these are the foundation factories that you will use in order to build complex supply chains of whatever you're choosing. So just as an example, so you get a bit of an idea of how this all comes together. So if you decided to start a basic supply chain, you can use a water collector that produces water, and you can also found a solar power plant that produces energy cells. Sorry. Oh man, so if you set up these 2 basic factories, that gives you the opportunity then to go and produce all of these farms. So you got your plant farm, rice farm, potato farm, tea farm, wheat farm, all of these farms, like the biotope type of categories that these fall under. All of these farms require water and energy cells to work. So you can start, if you start having a look, it all starts to make synergy together. So it gives you an idea when you're setting up stations that if I set up a couple stations, basic ones, I'm able to set up some farms and all the rest of it. So you can start seeing the supply chain symmetry that's going on. So we might take this a little bit further as an example. So this is if you had a water collector which produces water. Now again, I want to point out the water collector. This is quite popular moneymaker, because it seems like no matter where you go in the galaxy, everybody wants water. There's very few sectors that don't want water, and it always seems to be in high demand. So you probably make a lot of those water collector stations. Then you got your solar power plant that produces energy cells, and a gas collector for oxygen. Now the gas collector is a bit of an you probably can get away without having a gas collector, but anyway. So there's your basic foundation of factories, right? So again, they don't require any input. All they do is produce, and you just sell the raw goods. However, if you want to go one further, a wheat farm requires energy cells, and it also requires water, and that allows you to produce wheat. Now, if you're producing wheat, it allows you to produce a distillery, which the product is liquor, and that requires water and energy cells, the wheat farm. We can go one step further. If you made a wheat farm, then you'll be able to produce a cattle ranch, and a cattle ranch requires wheat, water and energy cells, I think, just off the top of my head. And then you can set up a meat factory or a dairy factory, and because you've set up, because cattle feeds into the meat factory, of course, and a dairy farm. I don't know why they call it a dairy factory. But yeah, so you can see a bit of a flow here from setting up basic, going from basic factories all the way through low-tech factories. These are still low-tech. It's nearly impossible for me to draw a conclusion for every single scenario. So I'm just picking out ones that might help you out or worth looking into. This is something I want to sort of point out, and this is something I don't really see very often. So the point is, some factories produce toxic waste. An example is a fertilizer factory. It produces fertilizer, and it produces a byproduct, which is toxic waste. Nobody buys toxic waste. So it just builds up in your station, in your factory, until it hits capacity in your storage capacity, and then your factory will shut down until you go along and get rid of the toxic waste. The only way you can kind of get rid of it is going to a trading post and hope that they take your toxic waste, or you've got to dump it in space somewhere. You've just got to just fly to the sun and just burn up the toxic waste. I don't know. You've got to get rid of it somehow. Nobody buys it. Your traders won't. AI traders will not touch toxic waste. It just sits there and it just clogs up your inventory. I've got a way of getting around it, but it's more like kicking the can down the road than actually dealing with it. I have another factory that I've got transferring toxic waste to, but I have to eventually unload it and dump it somewhere. Maybe in pirate space somewhere, I don't know. But just be mindful of that product, toxic waste. It's hard to deal with. It's a pain because it shuts down the being automated process. So we've gone over the basic synergy, like supply chains and how they all come together and all the rest of it. So we might go and talk about how we make it all come together. So we know that there's certain stations have synergy. Now, how do we make it work? So stations, once you found a station, they can't be any closer than 3 kilometers from each other. If you try to get closer, the station after you're done is just going to push your station away. So in order to trade with the other station, basically this is what we're doing. In order to trade, we use transporter software. This is one approach. We're gonna look at 4 approaches to this. And this first approach is installing transporter software to trade with other stations. Transporter software stacks, and what that does, it reduces the docking distance with the station you want to trade with, which is your own station. So basically, the station's 3.07 kilometers away, right? by stacking our transporter software, it puts us at 3.9 kilometers. It allows us to trade with that station because we're within that docking distance range. That's basically what it does. The other component to this is a trading system. We need this. It is a big must. It will not work without this. So you've got two components. The trading system, it doesn't matter, it can be anything. It could be a white. So, and transporter software. So make sure you exit to your drone. You cannot be in your station when you do this. Press M for map to get into your galaxy map. And select the station. This is a meat factory. It will be highlighted white. Hold shift down. It's important to hold shift down. That will highlight your station that you're wanting it to perform. And I'm looking for cattle because this is a meat factory and I want to buy 200 cattle for my meat factory. I want that to come into my inventory in my meat factory. Hold down shift again and hit the loop command. I don't think you really need a loop command on stations, but get in a habit of doing so because there's other processes that I want to show you later. So get in a habit of using the loop command. So we've bought cattle from that cattle ranch for the meat factory, and the meat factory is starting to work already. As you see, the lines are starting to produce. Yes, and we go down to trade goods. This and see how 200 cattle have now been transferred into our meat factory, so we can start producing leather and whatever it is that I've got there. So this is one way of linking your supply chain together. Now the other way is using cargo shuttles. So as you can see, my cattle ranch has cargo shuttles coming out of it. So it's set up my cattle ranch to use cargo shuttles. Now there is a 20 cargo shuttle limit you have per station. So I need oxygen, water and wheat. Wheat is the missing component that seems to be clogging up at the moment. Now I've got sell goods. Now to fetch goods from stations, I just select the wheat factory, wheat farm, and my little cargo vessels will go off to collect wheat from that station. The bigger the size, the better. So the wheat factory is just there. It's got a little wheat symbol. And you can kind of see shuttles going backwards and forwards collecting wheat. So there's plenty of wheat there. And it's slowly collecting wheat for my supply chain. It's a little bit of a weak link at the moment. But I wanted to show you how cargo shuttles work. They do work well if they have been set up correctly. Just make sure that the bigger the size of the little cargo shuttles, the better. So size 8 is the biggest limit biggest you can do, but get the bigger size, which is the size 8. Try to aim for that when setting up a station and using cargo shuttles. Ooh, so there's a bit of a mouthful. So you can set up. The third option is to set up your own cargo vessels, and basically what this is basically your own ship. So I've designed my own little cargo shuttle vessel. It's just another ship basically at the end of the day. There's two components that you need. The first one is you need a captain. That's crucial for anything automated. You always need a captain. And the other thing is a trading system. It can be run-of-the-mill trading system. It doesn't have to be an exceptional. It could be a white. The first thing you need to do is make sure you exit the vehicle. You're not inside the spaceship. Hold down shift, just like on the stations, and it will bring up the cargo vessel that you're looking at. And we're going to set it to buy goods. Now I want it to set up to buy energy cells. And I want to sell energy cells to my other stations, and I want that particular vessel to supply energy cells to other stations. So I've just put a buy order of 500 units, and you hold shift and then you hold shift again and then put in energy cells again. And you need to put 0. This is very important. Right? Now it's looped back and cancelled the buy order. So I'm just going to put the buy order back in. Type in energy cells. And then I'll put a buy order of, I don't know, 1,000. Hit buy. Alright. Then you hit the loop command. And that will go forever and a day and supply all of my factories that need energy cells. So it will collect energy cells. It's very important that you put that 0 so that it will sell those goods. It's very important that you follow that chain to the letter. Using the AI to supply your factory. So we've kind of touched on this, but I thought I might go over it again just at the end of this video so we can sort of wrap things up. So I have a servo factory. Now, admittedly, this factory is not set up to sell goods, but I'm requesting goods from AI. So it needs 4 components for this servo factory to work. So I don't have an extensive supply chain feeding into this factory. So I want to sort of point a few things out because I've got it set up slightly different to what you may have it set up in the game. This factory's main purpose for me setting this up is to buy goods in, not to sell them though, because I want to build up components for railguns where I am because I'm in the center of the galaxy and I need components to do that, and I don't like driving around looking for them. So I'll set up a factory and have the AI bring me all the goods. This is only one part of it. So this servo factory has cost me a fortune. So as you can see, the money I've spent on it is 10 million credits. I haven't made a profit and it's still negative 10. And it's because the way I've set this station up in particular. I've set the base price at 5%. I've set the buy goods from others. I've ticked that. Sell goods to other stations, I've unticked it. And actively request goods, I've ticked that. Actively sell goods, I've unticked it. I'm purposely not trying to sell goods. I want to use the servos that it manufactures later on when I want to produce railguns. However, you would probably tick buy goods from other stations, tick sell goods to others, actively request goods, and actively sell goods. So in order for your factory to continue to produce, you can have a factory without having an extensive supply chain behind it, and you will make money. This is a bad example, but you will make money, but it will take time. So it is another avenue if you wanted to set up stations without an extensive supply chain. All that will happen is that the AI will come in and start supplying you goods, and you will pay those goods. So you might notice 3 million go out of your bank account, and you're like, what? That's because you've spent that buying raw materials with the station. So yeah, that's the other way you can set up factories in Avorion. So yeah, so that's a basic overview of setting up factories, the supply chain, how to set up a supply chain. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a bit of fun to do, and yeah, I've really enjoyed I do enjoy setting up a home base and seeing all my hard work and seeing activity go on within your home base. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment. Yeah, I'd like to hear your feedback and what would you like me to cover next, maybe. And yeah, alright, see you out in the galaxy. Alright, thanks, bye.